Mike, Duke game. I mean, let's go. What are your reactions to what you saw? I mean, it was ugly. Where do you want to begin?
Yeah, that was about as I know during a pregame show we went through the dream outcome. We never went through the nightmare outcome. Right. But I think this is exactly what that was. It was about as bad in all aspects as you could think of, right? From kick returns to starting it with poor field position to defensively not being able to get a stop seemingly all game. To offensively really struggling, untimely penalties, sloppy turnovers. It just was bad all around and just not really expected. And I kind of went back in my mind to the way that the Pitt game was last year, which is everything just kind of went about as bad as it possibly could go, and you were never really into it, never could really get back into it, and ended up being a throwaway game with how the rest of the season went, right? It was so out of character for what this team was. The difference between that and this is you knew what you had with your quarterback, and you knew that was just a weird, awful, bad performance, but given what he had done to that point, you weren't real concerned about it because you knew what you had. This is different because you are starting a new quarterback, and there's still questions around how good he is, what he can be, et cetera. And that just this game just kind of raises more of those questions as he's getting acclimated to being a starter for the first time since he was in high school.
Yeah, so let's talk Rickie Collins. Was it as bad as the stats would indicate, or did you see some silver linings that it's going to be okay?
I didn't think it was quite as bad as what, maybe the initial reaction was. I thought there were some positive things. There were a couple of plays where he kept plays alive with his legs in the backfield. Those were good. He's got to take that and then know when to quit on the play, essentially. I'm thinking specifically to the one down inside the 5-yard line when he kind of scrambled around and broke 2 or 3 tackles in the backfield, and then instead of throwing it away and going to the next play inside the 5-yard line, ends up getting sacked back behind the 10-yard line. That kind of derailed that drive. So situations like that, I think he'll get with more experience. There were some throws that he made that I thought, he showed off some of his arm talent, but it wasn't there consistently. I didn't think that there were necessarily a lot of poor decisions with throwing the ball terribly in harm's way. Certainly a couple of throws he probably wishes he could have back. But I also thought that the offensive line wasn't as good as it had been in weeks past. And I thought his receivers let him down a little bit, whether it's, Jonte Cook fumbling it a couple of times, situations like that. I thought that the game plan early, which was try to give the ball to Yassine Willis, was good, take some pressure off of Rickie. And I thought they got away from feeding him the ball too early, even when they got down by multiple scores. It just seemed like he was going to be a real problem for that Duke defense, and I don't think they took enough advantage of that in this game.
Paulie said at the top of the show that he was more concerned about the defense, the run defense in particular, than he was about the offense. How concerned are you about the defensive side of the ball? Was it just a bad day at the office all around for all 3 phases, or are you concerned that might continue defensively here moving forward?
Well, you hope that it's just a bad day at the office. I mean, Duke is a really good offensive team. So let's start with that. That said, even though I think we all thought that they played well against Clemson, they did give up over 500 yards of offense. They certainly had their share of struggles stretches against Colgate, especially in the second half. I get it. Most of that was backups, but even still. And UConn for about 3 quarters, or 2.5 quarters or so, did pretty much whatever it wanted. And we know that, Tennessee put up over 40 points. So there are some things I think to be concerned about with the defense moving forward. But even with some of those struggles and some of the question marks and, how do you get consistent pass rushing and discussing how good of a tackling team this team is or could be, it was never as bad as what it looked like on Saturday. That just looked like they were completely overmatched, out-schemed, outmanned at seemingly every level, and I don't recall Syracuse, since Fran Brown has taken over, looking like that on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, so you've heard the term panic meter before. Where are we on the panic meter? I mean, listen, this team's not going to the ACC title game anymore, but I think the hope is, all right, can they get 6 wins? Can they get to a bowl game? Where's your level of panic based on whether or not they make it to a postseason game this year?
I think just watching one game, I think it's too early to hit the panic button. I understand you get used to a certain level of quarterback play with what we saw with Kyle McCord last year and how Steve Angeli had looked the last 2.5 games. It looked like Syracuse was getting really strong quarterback play, leading the country in passing once again. And then you go from that to what we saw on Saturday, where you're only putting up 3 points. You turn the ball over a lot, and it just didn't look anywhere close to the same level of execution, the same level of production, and all that. Even still, it was Rickie Collins' first start at the college level. And I'm not willing to just completely panic and, kind of sound the alarms yet. I want to see another game or two and see how he bounces back, how the team bounces back, before I start really hitting that meter.
All right, let's talk recruiting here real quick. A lot of guys were on campus for this game. I know that you have a couple articles out through your VIP section at CuseNation.com. I don't want you to give too much away, but tease us here a little bit with what we need to know from this past recruiting weekend.
Well, I know the first thought when the team gets blown out is usually, well, that can't be good for recruiting, right? So the thought is that the recruits are going to have a bad time. They're going to think less of Syracuse, et cetera. And I talked to, a dozen plus recruits that were football recruits that were on campus over the weekend, and quite the opposite, actually. They all raved about the atmosphere of the game, especially, in the start and early, and how loud it was when Eugene Willis made that crazy run where he hurdled a guy. They looked at some of the positive things from that standpoint. And then, of course, talking about the relationship with the coaches and, talking to the coaches after the game, they didn't shy away from the fact that obviously that was a disappointing performance and things like that, but just, spoke very highly of the hospitality that the coaches and the program gave them. So seemed to still be a pretty positive weekend from that standpoint. And then, of course, the basketball team had one of the best point guard prospects in the country, 5-star Deron Rippey, on campus as well.
Yeah, and he's looking at, Duke, Kentucky, NC State, Tennessee, are the others that he's got lined up. What are the chances Cuse actually lands him?
I think they've got a shot, but I also think it depends on how they play, right? Because those programs right now are viewed as more stable programs than what Syracuse is from an outside perspective. And the way that you stabilize things is you have a good year, so there isn't anyone talking about whether or not the coach is going to be here long term. If you have a good year, you're a good team, you get back to the tournament with some of the young talent they've had, with the way the Reds recruited, then I think you're going to be right in the mix, and it's going to depend on, relationships and NIL and role and ability to play right away and all those types of things that it usually is. But in order for Syracuse to get themselves realistically continue to be in those discussions, they have to have a good season to show that the program is headed in the right direction.
All right, Mike. Great stuff as always. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.